You may have heard of the 4% rule. It's a classic rule of thumb in retirement planning, but is it still the best approach in today's market landscape? Today, I'm introducing you to a fresh approach for retirement withdrawals. It comes from Vanguard and it's called dynamic spending strategy. I'm Eli Freeman. Let's look at the data. So here's the basic idea. The traditional 4% rule assumes you withdraw a fixed percentage of your retirement portfolio in the first year, and you adjust it for inflation every year thereafter, no matter what's happening in the stock market. You're sticking to a pretty rigid plan that doesn't account for markets ups and markets downs. That is actually why most people like the strategy. It doesn't involve a lot of thinking or changes. It really only involves properly setting up a portfolio and then distributing the 4% plus inflation each year. I think that there's a lot of good that can come from this. You know exactly what is going to be paid as income for the current year, and you know that next year it probably won't be any less than this year. The dynamic spending strategy, on the other hand, is, as the name suggests, a little bit more flexible. It's all about adjusting your spending based on the market performance. Here's how it works. With the dynamic spending strategy, you establish both a floor and a ceiling for your withdrawals. These numbers are the minimum and the maximum amounts that you're willing to take from your portfolio on any given year. When the market is down, you stick to that floor, keeping withdrawals low to avoid tapping too much of your portfolio. When the market is up, you have the flexibility to actually increase your spending up to the ceiling, taking a bit more out while your investments are doing well. The floor and the ceiling are typically percentages of your portfolio. As an example, let's say that you have set your floor at 2% distribution and your ceiling at a 6% distribution. If there was a year when the market was down, the next year you would distribute only 2% of the portfolio, which would likely mean that you would need to cut back on some of the more luxurious spending items like trips, travel, or house projects. Then, if the market turned around, the next year you could distribute 6% of the accounts. But keep in mind, setting your floor and your ceiling isn't just picking random numbers. There are 4 key factors that Vanguard suggests that you consider when setting them up. The first is market performance. Naturally, how your investments are performing from a year to year is a huge factor. The idea is that when the market's down, you don't want to sell assets at a low, so you'll limit your withdrawals. And when it's up, you can afford to take a bit more. The second is short-term spending stability. This one's really all about your immediate financial needs. If you have fixed expenses or a tighter budget, you might set your floor a bit higher to ensure that you're covered, regardless of the market dips. Think of it as having enough buffer even when things get rough. The third is spending flexibility. Maybe you're comfortable tightening the belt in a down year. Then you can set a lower floor. For example, if you don't have large fixed expenses that are needed on a month-to-month basis from the portfolio, your floor could be 0% because you have enough income from Social Security and/or pensions. However, if your portfolio pays your mortgage, your floor will likely need to be higher than 0%. It's about balancing security and flexibility here, knowing what you can and cannot handle in different market conditions. And number 4, portfolio variability. How variable or volatile is your portfolio? If you're invested in assets that are highly volatile, you may want to keep the floor higher and the ceiling lower to prevent large swings in your spending along with your volatile portfolio. Okay, so how could this strategy be beneficial? For one, it provides flexibility. Instead of a rigid withdrawal rate, you're adapting to market conditions, which can help your portfolio last longer. For those of you who value stability but are open to flexibility, this approach can be a nice balance. Think of it as not putting all of your eggs in one basket, or in this case, not putting your withdrawals in one static percentage. Some of the main upsides include better alignment with market performance, potential for increased spending in good years, and the ability to preserve your portfolio in lean times. Over a 20 or 30-year retirement, these small adjustments could help extend the life of your investments, and that could be powerful. Here's a graph from Vanguard, which pulled from a short video linked in the description below, and it illustrates the dynamic spending strategy with 3 different retirement timeframes over a 30-year period versus a 4% withdrawal strategy. You can clearly see that the spending is much more variable, but in all of the cases ultimately provided for more income throughout the 30-year retirement. Of course, there are a few downsides to think about. First, it's more work. Unlike the 4% rule, which you set it and forget it, this strategy requires annual reassessment of your floor and your ceiling, and you've got to be more engaged with your portfolio, which can be a plus for some and a headache for others. And here's another thing to consider. If you're not comfortable with market swings, or if you really need to rely on consistent spending, the dynamic spending strategy could be more stressful for you. Imagine waiting each year to see if you get to keep your ceiling rate or if you're stuck with the floor. This kind of volatility might not sit well with everyone. So who's this strategy really good for? It's probably best suited for retirees with moderate spending flexibility and some financial cushion, those who can adapt their budget if necessary. If you're someone who wants a bit more control over your retirement income, this could be a great way to maximize income while reducing the risk of running out of funds. In the end, there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. The 4% rule might work just fine if you're looking for simplicity and stability, while the dynamic spending strategy is for those who prefer a little bit more of a hands-on or adaptive approach. Each strategy has its strengths and weaknesses, but it all comes down to knowing your goals, your financial needs, and your tolerance for risk. And if you liked this video, I also have a video about how to combat losing money in the market, which you can click right here to watch.